You might believe that your thoughts, choices, and actions are entirely your own. You may think you are the sole architect of your decisions, guided by reasoning. But what if I told you that more often than not, your decisions are influenced by subtle processes deep within your brain, processes you're barely aware of? Our minds are filled with cognitive shortcuts, biases, and errors that shape how we interpret the world. These mental patterns are part of human thinking. These shortcuts help us process the overwhelming information we encounter daily. But often they lead us astray, distorting how we perceive reality. In this video, we'll explore 21 fascinating mental phenomena, from cognitive biases to logical fallacies, and understand how they shape your thoughts. These patterns are so deeply embedded in us that you might go through life unaware of how much they influence your decisions every single day. You can't simply turn these biases off or delete them from your brain. They're a fundamental part of what makes us human and how we think. However, recognizing these patterns, understanding why they occur, and learning how to mitigate their effects can make you a more rational individual. This series is inspired by Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, which explores mental shortcuts in depth. Kahneman explains how we think fast, using instinctive and emotional responses, and slow, using deliberate and logical reasoning, and how they interact. Let's start with cognitive dissonance, a concept as old as human thought itself. This occurs when our beliefs or desires are in conflict, causing discomfort. Imagine this. A hungry fox tries to grab grapes but fails. To cope with failure, he decides the grapes are sour, a classic example of cognitive dissonance. We experience this too, losing a job opportunity and blaming the interviewer instead of admitting the other candidate might have been better suited. Cognitive dissonance often pushes us to rationalize situations, aligning them with our pre-existing beliefs to reduce the mental tension we feel. To overcome cognitive dissonance, ask yourself, what beliefs are in conflict? Am I distorting reality to protect my ego? What actions can resolve this? The spotlight effect makes you overestimate how much people notice you. Small mistakes feel huge, but in truth, others rarely notice or remember. For instance, spilling coffee on your shirt feels embarrassing, but most people don't notice or quickly forget. The bias stems from our egocentric perspective. Recognizing the spotlight effect reduces anxiety. Next time you feel self-conscious, remind yourself, most people are too busy focusing on themselves. The anchoring effect. Initial numbers or values bias your decisions. For example, being told a car costs $30,000 makes a $27,000 price seem like a bargain. This bias skews judgment in shopping, salary negotiations, and beyond. Anchors influence us even when they're irrelevant to the actual situation. To counteract anchoring, set your benchmarks beforehand. Research market values or create mental anchors to ground your decisions in reality. The halo effect. Positive traits overshadow flaws. For example, a charming person is perceived as more competent, even without evidence to support it. This bias appears in work, relationships, and education. A punctual employee's mistakes are overlooked, while others' errors are magnified unfairly. To resist the halo effect, assess traits individually, question first impressions, and ensure your judgment isn't colored by one dominant characteristic. The gambler's fallacy. Believing random events have memory. For instance, if a coin lands on heads 3 times, tails feels due, even though odds remain the same. This fallacy keeps gamblers betting, believing luck will change. In reality, each event is independent and unaffected by previous outcomes. Gambler's fallacy extends beyond casinos. In tests, students avoid the same answer repeatedly, believing it's unlikely, even when it's correct multiple times. To avoid this bias, focus on the independence of events. Recognize that randomness has no memory, and patterns don't guarantee specific outcomes. The contrast effect. Perceptions change based on context. For example, a $50 shirt feels cheap next to a $300 one, but expensive near a $20 option. This bias affects shopping, negotiations, and even relationships. Contrasts distort how we perceive value, quality, or attractiveness. To counteract the contrast effect, evaluate things independently. Ask, would I still choose this without the comparison? Focus on the item's true value. Confirmation bias. The tendency to favor information that supports your beliefs. We selectively interpret data to reinforce what we already think. Social media magnifies this bias. Algorithms show content aligning with your views, creating echo chambers that isolate you from opposing ideas. To combat confirmation bias, actively seek opposing perspectives. Challenge your beliefs by considering evidence that disproves them. The Zeigarnik effect. Unfinished tasks linger in your mind, causing mental tension. This bias motivates completion, but can also lead to stress. Writing a plan helps relieve this tension. Simply listing steps to finish a task can clear mental clutter and reduce stress. The paradox of choice. While variety feels appealing, too many options often lead to decision paralysis and dissatisfaction. Studies show that people are more likely to decide when offered fewer choices. Simplicity clarifies decisions and increases satisfaction. To simplify decision-making, focus on priorities. Limit your options and evaluate only what truly matters to you. Awareness of biases improves judgment. By recognizing these patterns, you can confront them and make more rational, deliberate decisions in life. Understanding biases doesn't mean eliminating them. It means learning to mitigate their impact and becoming a more thoughtful decision maker. The journey begins with recognizing these biases. This video series encourages you to explore and reflect on how they influence your thoughts. Let's revisit cognitive dissonance. When beliefs or desires conflict, discomfort arises. Rationalizing reduces this tension, often distorting reality. This bias helps protect your ego, but can prevent growth. Facing truths directly and reconciling conflicting beliefs leads to greater self-awareness. Next, the spotlight effect. We often feel like we're the center of everyone's attention, overestimating how much others notice our mistakes. Most people are focused on themselves, not you. Recognizing this can help reduce social anxiety and free you from unnecessary self-consciousness. The anchoring effect. Starting points or initial values can skew your judgment. For example, an inflated starting price makes discounts seem appealing. Anchoring affects decisions in many areas, from shopping to salary negotiations. Recognizing its influence helps ground your choices in reality. The halo effect. Positive or negative traits create an overall impression. For example, an attractive person may be seen as more competent. First impressions heavily influence perception. To avoid this bias, assess traits independently and challenge your initial reactions. The gambler's fallacy makes us believe patterns in randomness, but random events are independent. Past outcomes don't predict future ones. This bias leads to false expectations in gambling, tests, and even life decisions. Awareness helps ground expectations in logic, not superstition. The contrast effect distorts perception. Comparisons with nearby items or values can make something seem better or worse than it truly is. Luxury stores use this to highlight expensive items, making mid-priced ones seem more reasonable by comparison. It's a subtle psychological trick. To avoid the contrast effect, evaluate things independently. Ask yourself, would this seem valuable without comparisons? Focus on true value. Confirmation. Bias makes us seek information that aligns with our beliefs, ignoring contradictory evidence. It reinforces what we already think. Social media amplifies this bias, creating echo chambers where algorithms feed us content that supports our existing views, isolating us further. To overcome confirmation bias, seek opposing perspectives. Test your beliefs by exploring evidence that challenges them, not just supports them. The Zeigarnik effect explains why unfinished tasks linger in your mind, creating tension. This mental push motivates completion, but can lead to stress. Writing down a plan can reduce this tension. Listing steps for completion clears mental clutter, bringing focus and relieving stress. The paradox of choice. While having options feels empowering, too many choices overwhelm us, making it harder to decide or feel satisfied. Studies show people are happier with fewer choices. Reducing options clarifies decisions, making us more confident and satisfied with our selections. To simplify decisions, prioritize what truly matters. Limit your options to avoid paralysis and focus on what aligns with your values. Awareness of biases transforms decision-making. Recognizing these influences helps you make thoughtful, deliberate choices in all areas of life. Understanding doesn't erase biases but reduces their impact. By identifying when they arise, you can make decisions grounded in logic and awareness. The key is self-awareness. Recognize these biases not as flaws, but as part of being human, and learn to work with them thoughtfully. This series is your guide to understanding and navigating mental shortcuts. Awareness is the first step to mastering your decisions and your mind. Biases like cognitive dissonance, anchoring, and the paradox of choice shape our lives. Recognizing their influence is a journey to better thinking. The journey of self-awareness never truly ends. By constantly reflecting and challenging your thoughts, you'll continue growing as an individual. Awareness of biases isn't just about decisions. It's about understanding yourself and building a clearer perspective on the world around you. Thank you for joining this exploration of cognitive biases. Let's continue to learn and grow, becoming more thoughtful and rational in our lives. Remember, the mind is a powerful tool. By understanding its patterns, you can harness its potential and make decisions that align with your true self.